behalf of TechPACT, I welcome you to this webinar, which is part of the TechPACT Equity for All research series. TechPACT envisions a world where anyone with a passion for technology has the opportunity to succeed. Founded by a group of impassioned technology leaders, we are committed to raising diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging across the technology community. Hi, I'm Edward Wilson Smythe. My pronouns are they and them, and I am the head of research at TechPACT. This webinar is based on an upcoming TechPACT white paper titled Impact Beyond the Diversity Headlines, which identifies 4 key drivers of inequity in technology workplaces and industry as a whole: biased recruiting, unfair opportunities and recognition, exclusionary norms and rituals, and psychologically unsafe workplaces. The white paper also presents 12 tangible and immediate steps that technology leaders can take to drive meaningful change in their workplaces and across the technology community. Today at this webinar, we're privileged to have 2 leaders join us to discuss the topic of how to create fair and equitable workplaces, Rachel Agingu and Philip Nemeth. Before we begin, let us have our guests tell you a bit more about themselves in their own words. Rachel, Philip, welcome. Please introduce yourselves to the audience.
Thank you, Edward. I'm Rachel Agingu. I work for Cummins in the digital transformation space, focusing on strategy. I'm a Kenyan American dual citizen. I do have a niece and goddaughters that I love very much. I am passionate about philanthropy. I am passionate about the girl child, and that's just stemming from my country and where I come from and the opportunities that the girl child are offered. So my legacy work is to be known for mentoring young women and girls. And I am so happy to be in this panel, and thank you so much for having me.
Hey everyone, my name is Philip Nemeth. My pronouns are he, him, and again, thank you so much for having me here. I'm a management consultant with Alex Partners. I specialize and I work with retailers, brands, fashion, footwear companies, which I find to be a space that is really exciting. It's a place that is undergoing a lot of change, and I find a lot of excitement from what I do, and it touches many different people, and I think diversity in fashion and in retail is really prevalent as well. Besides that, I'm also the global leader for Pride Matters, which is our ERG at Alex Partners, and I have been very involved in many different initiatives that we are trying to do as the ERG, as organization, to make sure that LGBTQ people have the right opportunities within the firm and are able to grow and feel a sense of belonging at Alex Partners. I'm based in Miami, and with my husband, we love to travel and explore the world, and I very much look forward to the webinar today. Thank
you so much, Rachel and Philip. It's really great to have you on board. I think we'll have a great discussion of many different perspectives. One of the things that always excites me is exploring intersectionality, and just having the 2 of you on board along with me. We know as we talk, we realize we're more connected than we are different, and that's where the strength comes in having these discussions. So let's jump in then. If the white paper talks about unfair workplaces in terms of opportunities, recognition, rewards, and how they impact marginalized groups unfairly, pretty consistently. If you could just start off by talking about whether it's your personal experiences or experiences that you've become aware of based on your role in leadership and advocacy of how this dynamic plays out in organizations. Let's start off with that, and then we can delve into more details as we get insights from you. So either one of you wants to take the start, we'll take it from there.
I'm happy to start. This is a topic that I'm passionate about. I think creating fair opportunities and allowing people to grow across any backgrounds, any groups is incredibly important. And it is a huge issue that we still unfortunately face in the corporate world, and not only the corporate world, if we are honest. We have done a lot of progress for sure, and we should be proud of what we have done, but we still need to look ahead. I also believe when we look at D&I and when we look at different ERGs and marginalized groups, there is still a lot of diversity within the diversity. And I think people sometimes get ahead of themselves when they think, well, we have gay CEOs and it's all great. But then we really think about what's the experience for a gay men of a color, for a lesbian, for a transgender person, non-binary person. There's still a lot of work that we have to do, and creating opportunities is critical to change this. I think we've done a lot of work at the lower levels, creating some sense of belonging. We are working on recruitment and hiring. But if we stop there, if we don't create opportunities for people to grow and progress and get further, we will not break the stereotypes that we have today. If people don't feel that they have those opportunities, it's going to be difficult for others to see themselves in leadership roles, in senior roles, and that's critical. We see a lot of issues in how we're even perceiving or understanding promotions and positions of power. There's been a lot of great research done on what adjectives we are using when we are talking about leadership roles. Those are typically things like decisive and hardworking and driven. And a lot of those adjectives have, for many people, there is some research done that they perceive them to be more male. When you ask an average person when they think about CEO, they typically see a male CEO in their head immediately. And then we use a lot of adjectives like friendly or communal or team player for typically a lower level positions. And those adjectives are very often associated more with females. And therefore, we're already creating a space that is not equal, that is favoring a certain type of person over favoring a certain type of attributes or skills that are important. And so this is definitely an issue that is very prevailing, and we see it around, and we have to work hard to make sure that we try to create an awareness and we try to create processes and policies that are going to help us to overcome this.
Rachel, thank you, Philip. That was really insightful. Rachel, your perspectives?
So my perspective on the white paper is, my first thought was it's very relatable. As a Black African woman in a very male-dominated space, which is IT, I have had to deal with biased performance metric. I think you also mentioned that. I have an example on my own whereby, and earlier on in my career, I was labeled as aggressive, and that impacted the way I show up. It caused me to shrink. It caused me to walk on eggshells, and it also caused me to question myself and my capabilities. So I'm very energized to see that we are talking about this. There is some progress that has been made in the D&I space, but there's still work for us to do, as Philip has mentioned. I've also had to deal with microaggression. Every role that I've stepped into since I started working straight out of college, I've had to spend a good 2 months proving that I'm actually skilled and knowledgeable in the space. So having that space whereby, we are recognized for what we contribute, especially as Black immigrant women, is very, without being questioned, it is very, very necessary and very important. It's something that we have to continue to look at, and something that, we still have to challenge the D&I leaders as well as ourselves to make sure that we take into consideration.
Thank you. And those are really great points you made about just the overall culture that makes certain types of looks, behaviors, even walks and names the norm, and others are, you have to fit into that to succeed. And to Philip, to your point about what's acceptable as a CEO, I was writing a paper about a year ago on algorithmic bias. I just typed in CEO onto Google search engine, and in the 95% of the faces were white men. The first Black person was 17 pages down, and it was an image of a Black young person on be a CEO for a day program targeting marginalized youth, not in terms of being a CEO themselves. And there were very few female CEOs, despite all the women CEOs we've had, even in the Fortune 500 recently. So that, I think it starts with that socially and then comes into the company. in terms of how those norms are. One of the other things we can try and explore is what support do people get as they are maybe even earlier in their career. And we know that mentorship and advocacy is absolutely critical. So could you share your perspectives or your experiences in terms of whether you had the right mentorship that helped you and what that meant for you as someone from a marginalized identity, or whether you saw some discrepancies around there? So again, either one, if you start, want to take that, and we can delve further into that.
I'll start. So I have been fortunate to have only 2 key mentors throughout my 15-year career, right? And one was earlier on, he was African-American male in my previous company. I was straight out of college, and he had intentional interest to guide me and coach me how to carry myself, in the corporate space as a Black immigrant woman, what I need to look out for. And I have to say that was really helpful for me going forward, right? And the other key mentor I had was a manager that I reported to. And I have to say, he's the only manager who was very interested in making sure that he can elevate me in my career. And it was very, very helpful that he had that much confidence in me. And even after he helped me get to the next role, I actually went to South Africa for an assignment, and he is the one who helped manage that. He had a meeting with the incoming manager to explain to him how strong of a resource I am. And I think we should do more of that. I do feel, and this is also speaking to myself, this is something that we have to intentionally and actively pursue. Mentoring others that look like us. So like me, as I seek out the Black immigrant women, seek not only Black immigrant women, anybody who is starting out in their career. We all know that they need this, right? So guiding them and coaching them. It is very, very, it's a very needed support in this space. Because if we don't know what to do and what to say, then we're just figuring it out, right? So I cannot stress the importance of mentorship.
Yeah, I agree with Rachel. Mentoring is just so critical to everyone's career and progress, and having the right mentor can really change the career trajectory for any one of us. I've been fortunate to have amazing mentors, people who really believe in me as a whole person and really valued who I am and what I bring. I've been very fortunate that people around me in my career supported also the work that I do outside of the day-to-day activities. As I mentioned, I am the global lead for one of our ERGs, which takes time. And having the support of my mentors and leaders in the organization that I do spend time, and this is a part of what I do in the organization, is critical, because we need to have that support around us to be able to continue to advance. But I also agree with what Rachel said, like there is a need to have mentors who are like you, or who have experiences like you or similar like you, because I, as much as I can, help and try to think about, for example, whatever transgender transition policies are at the firm, I have not gone through transition. I am not able to relate as much as somebody who has had that experience. Mm-hmm. And so creating ERGs is really critical. Creating space and community for people who are similar, who can share their experiences, their struggles, their challenges, can help everyone to bring them up, to bring up the awareness. But it cannot stop there. It really needs to continue to be then broadened, and intersectionality is so important across all of our groups, which also includes white, straight men, because we need to continue to create awareness and educate people across all of the different groups on all of the different over the differences, because that helps everyone to feel more comfortable with other people who are different to be in a close contact or working together. And so mentorship is part of that. It is just so critical and crucial for success of the individuals and then ultimately the organizations, because ultimately the organizations do better and everybody does better if employees are happy, if employees progress, and the right people become the managers and the senior executives and the CEOs who have the skill set, the capabilities, but also the understanding.
You know, to put a mentorship, what suggestions would you have for people who had not been as fortunate as, the three of us, where, you're a new hire, maybe the organization culture isn't as positive and collaborative and supportive as some of the organizations we've worked at or are working at right now. What would you suggest to somebody who is kind of, for whatever reason, trying to figure their way out, are not getting the right attention from senior leaders? What have you seen work in your personal experience, or stories of other people that you could share with the audience?
Yeah, don't be afraid to ask and don't settle, because if you just say, okay, this is enough, then you are not going to progress. Keep exploring. Mentorship is not something that everybody can do. There are good mentors and there are mentors that are just not as great. And it also doesn't mean that one person can be mentor for everyone. And so don't be afraid to ask, network, go around, explore, and talk to people and find who has the experiences, the trajectory, the background that might be similar to you, who might share something that's valuable to you, and don't be afraid to ask for support. I think we often just try to solve everything ourselves and are afraid to be loud and to say something, but that's holding just ourselves back. And so my recommendation is go ask, network, and don't settle just for the okay, really go for the best.
I agree with Philip. I agree that you have to continue to ask, you have to actively seek, you have to actively network. Don't be afraid to ask. You will find that one person who will be open to mentoring. And you, like Philip said, you may find a bad mentor. That's okay. Just keep seeking out there, keep networking, keep asking. I've always started with somebody that, somebody who is in the same trajectory as mine, or somebody that looks like me. It's always been easier and more comfortable for me to do that. So don't be afraid to ask. Start with somebody who you trust and who you feel comfortable with, and keep doing it until you find the right person. I think the space and the opportunities are there right now. So.
Yeah, I think that's a very good point both of you make. It's try and find the right people. Sometimes organizations do a good job of aligning mentors, which is great. Other times, and I'll give you a personal example. Many moons ago in another consulting firm, my mentor, the one piece of advice he gave me was that I should stop trying to stand out too much, because I wore colored socks, which was apparently very controversial in North America 15 years ago. Nowadays, everyone wears colored socks. I mean, you have to wear colored socks to be elected a politician in some countries nowadays. But you stop trying to stand out. And the message was this is the weirdest message. And he actually believed this was key to success in that firm, which it probably was at that point in time. The only thing exceptional about you should be your work. So you should drive the plainest, most ordinary white or beige car. You should wear the plainest and most ordinary white and beige clothes. You should have the same hair as everyone else. And I was like, okay, time to find another mentor, because clearly what you're suggesting is not what any one of us today say is successful. What I realized through that is that individuals, who we look up to, may also be struggling with the same things. And part of the challenge as leaders is that, to create space to be a mentor, the mentors need to be comfortable enough and not having their own struggles. And sometimes a lot of the mentors are also dealing with the same challenges that people are dealing with, and it just becomes one of those dynamics that we all collectively need to address. So if we move forward on that topic of, let's say, valuation, I think, Rachel, you mentioned up front that some of the words, like you were perceived aggressive. I've been called flamboyant, which I am, but don't call me that. I mean, sure, I don't deny that, but just don't call me that. It's okay. Or what Philip talked about in terms of certain attributes. So from your perspective, what can we do to take that subjective evaluation out and focus on the value that an individual brings to the organization, the community, the clients, etc.? So either one of you want to pick on that, and then we'll move on based on what we hear.
I think it's very important to constantly challenge and be aware of the biases that we bring to work. That's very important for the manager that is providing that feedback. It will help with the productivity of the team. It will help with innovation and just performance overall. And I also have advice for the person receiving the feedback. It is always good to receive constructive feedback, but one thing that I know that has helped me is to stay focused, always be kind, and do the work. And the perception will change, and maybe the biased performance feedback will also change. And that actually was the case with mine. I just focused on the work and my stakeholders and my team members saw the positive, and they were able to turn that around and be advocates for me because it was a very, it wasn't a private, it was public performance metric that was put out there. So that's my advice.
Yep. And as kind of I refer to the white paper and was written there about creating unbiased performance metrics and evaluating and broadening the evaluation process. The one thing I would add here is just also really think about what's the success, what does it look like, and how do you make sure that the ultimate goal doesn't seem biased already or unattainable for somebody who might not see themselves in that role. It's very important that the organization and teams, when they think about new roles, promotions, or new job openings, they really think about how to structure the goals of the role and how they talk about it. So it is based on the right skills and the capabilities, and it doesn't exclude somebody who might not see themselves fit for the role, because the last thing you want is for somebody not to even apply or raise their hand. And then the second thing is that I just alluded to a little bit earlier is make sure you continue to increase the awareness and understanding of these teams, of what they're trying to do. It's very easy for us as leaders to continue to pick people who are similar to us, who look like us, to bring them up. And if we have very homogeneous groups of leaders, they will continue to create very homogeneous groups of leaders. And so their awareness and their understanding and their ability to feel okay with others, it's going to be critical to help others who are marginalized and are those groups to progress and grow in their careers.
Philip, you said something really interesting there about the evaluation criteria having certain criteria, and then people sort of say, well, I don't meet those criteria, I can't possibly. One of the research things we dove into is that people who believe they're the norm in any society will typically apply for a role, whether it's a new job, whether it's a promotion, whether it's a stretch assignment, whatever it might be, if they meet about 60% of the objectives. If you have 10 objectives and I meet 6 of them, but in every other way I feel I am the cultural norm, I'm going to apply for the job. For people who are marginalized, whether it's LGBTQ plus people, whether it's women, whether it's Black people, whether it's immigrants, whether it's Hispanic people, we typically do not apply until we meet every objective. And it's crazy because no one meets every objective. And I think a large part of that has to do with imposter syndrome, where we kind of sit back and say, hey, I really don't deserve this because look at those other people, they play golf, or look at those other people, they rock a Brooks Brothers suit, or whatever those silly things are we talk about. Look at those other people with very nice hair, or whatever it might be, right? So how have you personally face that in your own careers as you've grown up, given all your different identities? And how would you suggest people who are doubting themselves and holding themselves back, Philip, to your point, how do we respond to that and sort of go in just like everybody else is? And, like they say, fake it till you make it. But, if that's the rules of the game, how do we just get past that hurdle of saying, I am only 6 out of 10, I shouldn't do something?
Yeah, there is a different level of evaluation for people who are coming from those marginalized groups. There is just maybe partially unconscious, maybe some partially conscious bias. If I'm evaluating a person and I see them and they don't fit my stereotypical kind of person for the role, I immediately, well, not personally, hopefully, but like somebody can be thinking like, well, is this education really true? Like, did they really accomplish this? Well, maybe she had the help of a colleague to accomplish this paper. Oh, maybe he was supportive with somebody else. And that results that marginalized people or people from marginalized groups have the imposter syndrome. They feel they have to overcome what the role is requiring them to do because they have had experience where there's a different bar for them. There's just a different evaluation where there is some level of non-believing they could have done what they've done. I 100% am very much aware, as Rachel said, like I came to the US as an adult, I have an accent, and it's something while I am white, I'm a male, maybe in certain occasion I couldn't pass as a straight man, I have an accent and I will not be able to hide it. And it is something that I sometimes feel, is it taking me back? Is somebody going to look at it as something that can hurt my career and trajectory? And so I'm always trying to make sure I can fit every single little thing because subconsciously I know about all the other things that somebody might not like about me. So how I overcome or get as much better as everybody else to secure the role of the promotion. So it is very tricky, and I have to work with those who are the top to realize that and make sure they don't have a different bar for somebody who doesn't fit their stereotypical person applying for the role.
Thank you, Philip. That is very insightful. Equity is very necessary. Drawing from my very personal, vulnerable experience, I have experienced and I have lived the imposter syndrome all the way until 2020. And I have to be honest, the pandemic is the light bulb that went off, and so many sequence of events. I finally came to realize that I'm actually good at what I do. I know for the last 15 years, the bar has been different, as Philip mentioned. But as of 2020, I now am confident, and I'm confident in stating that, you know what, I'm good at what I do. I know what I can contribute. I'm aware of my weaknesses, right? I'm also constantly challenging my biases as well, to be constantly better. So my advice to anybody that is going through this is, you have to be a relentless advocate for yourself, first and foremost. And that is going to enable others to see that, you know what, maybe we need to change how we describe or how we define or how we set the bar. You have to be a relentless advocate of yourself. So.
And I think to that point, Rachel and Philip, thank you for sharing those really personal examples. The intent isn't to re-traumatize either of you or anybody listening, but thank you for being open enough and vulnerable enough to share those so that we can all learn and collectively do better in the future. I think one of the things we come up is that I'll give you a very personal example. I'm Canadian, though everyone calls me an immigrant because of the way I look, because you cannot be Canadian and look like me, apparently, which is a topic for another day. I just happened to finish my undergrad and business school in India because it was, my parents both had jobs there. I hung out there, fell in love with two separate people at the same time. I wasn't going to give that up to go to Dartmouth. I'm sorry. It was just a very stupid, personal 16-year-old, 17-year-old stubbornness, right? But when I came back to Canada after business school and about 6 or 7 years of hanging around Europe, doing non-corporate stuff, a recruiter from one of the consulting firms reached out. So I didn't apply, they reached out. And so they knew my resume, all the way through somehow. But then she suggested that I add my Canadian high school. Have you ever been asked to add your high school in your resumes? Because otherwise they would not understand that I actually went to a legit undergrad and a legit business school, which is one of the best business schools in the world. But that's how the bias creeps in. And I remember, at age 27 or 29, looking back and saying, if I do this, I will forever be subordinate, because I will accept a world that everything that's happened to my life until right now is not valuable. I said, no, I'm not going to do that. If they don't want to hire me, I'll go back and do stand-up comedy in Amsterdam. I have a nice life. So I think that's the other realization we all need to have. Each one of us, some of us are just privileged, and that's the concept of privilege. We have all the advantages of birth, of parental income, parental education, citizenship, all those other things. But the vast majority of us have had to overcome several things, being an immigrant. Anyone who has dealt with the US immigration system, bravo for overcoming that stuff, because it's absolutely insane. Anyone who, is living while Black, bravo for continuing to live in the face of everything that happens to Black people in this world. So I think we need to back ourselves to say that whatever we have done is not only worthy, but in many cases superlative to the norms that are set out by society. And I think somehow we need to educate and empower people to look at themselves in that terms, as opposed to I didn't really go to this school, I don't speak with this accent, I don't have hair that looks like this, I'm not this tall, I don't speak, whatever it is might be, I don't have the right gender as my spouse, as opposed to saying, look at everything I've done despite all those challenges. Any thoughts on that, or?
I do have a thought, certainly. When you're speaking about the resume scenario, I have to say that any education or any sort of certification that I got outside of US has not been considered. I mean, I've been in the US now long, right? And I've been able to get the relevant education in the US, but anything before I came to the US is just considered null and void, right? Because they don't know, what does this mean, The other, when you're talking about, I've forgotten. I've forgotten, sorry, Philip, you go ahead.
No, I mean, I completely agree. And there's just so much research done how resumes are screened and how biased that approach is. And I mean, you just mentioned one of the examples that makes it real. And for those people who don't believe that there is still bias in hiring and in promotions and recognition of people, it's still very real, even in progressive companies and industries like consulting and professional services. So we have to continue to work on this. We have to continue to bring up the awareness. And the first step in changing this is acknowledging it. Because unless we acknowledge there is a systemic issue, we will not be able to change that.
Thank you. We probably have about 10 minutes, 7 to 10 minutes left. So let's try to go to the last part of the discussion. As leaders, you're both driving significant change in your organizations. What are you doing yourselves to ensure that the organizations are fairer and more equitable than they have been in the past? And also, what advice would you have for other leaders that are either taking the same journey or attempted to take the same journey?
Yeah, I mean, so as I mentioned, I'm the global lead for our ERG. And so kind of when I was thinking about this question, I break it down into two parts: what I do as my official role of the global leader, and then what I do as Philip Nemeth in the organization. So in the first group, we try to make sure that we stay up to date on everything what's happening. We work with nonprofits and other organizations that help us to understand what are the best practices, what are the most current issues, and what we know about other marginalized groups and what they face. So we can take that and implement it at Alex Partners in the best possible way and continue to ensure that we have the foundation across policies and practices and ways of working that is going to support equitable and diverse workplace and place where everybody can feel themselves. Second part of it is the hiring and the promotions, a lot of the things that we talked about today. And then the third thing is about making sure that we continue to increase awareness, and we really try to make sure that we are reaching as much of the firm as possible, and we continue to bring those topics to them. And then when I talk about the personal side, what I have been trying to do for the last decade or so is I don't come out anymore. I am who I am. And when there is a reason for me to mention my husband, I say I have a husband. And very often I take the risk that somebody might look at me differently or might misjudge me or might not value who I am as a person. But I take that risk because it's the only way to continue to progress. I very often interact with clients and with people outside of our firm in a variety of different geographies and areas of the US of the world as well. And it is really, really important for me to do this because I believe that we change the world by changing one mind at a time. And if there is somebody who values me as a colleague, me as a person, the work that I do, the work that I deliver, if they know I'm also gay, I hope to make and change their perception of the gay or LGBTQ community in large, because if they might have had perception about gay people in the past, maybe now they will be, well, but Philip is actually really nice, hopefully, and really talented, and hopefully that changed them. So I try to live as a gay man and not as somebody who needs to come out. This is just me. I will continue to live like that. And if you don't like it, I'll move on.
So good. So good.
Bravo. Bravo.
And I agree. It is very important to be true to self. Show up as yourself, as your authentic self. I'm going to say I didn't do that before, but I am now doing it. The reason why I wear my hair that way, the reason why I wear a red lip, I also have a tattoo sleeve. And I, just like Philip said, if I continue to be really good at what I do, my tattoos don't matter. My tattoos don't take away from my skill and my knowledge, right? If I'm bald or if I'm wearing my red lip, it doesn't take away from how I show up. So if another minority demographic looks at Rachel and says, you know what, she shows up as her true self and also is excellent at what she consistently does, then you know what, maybe there's a chance for me to do. So showing up as your true self is one. Always continuing to encourage psychological safety is what I try to do. I also try to create and provide opportunities for everybody around me to be seen and heard, especially for the marginalized group, because there's a tendency to fear and not speak up. So if I'm in a meeting that I'm hosting or facilitating, I obviously comfortably request their view so that they can see that, their view is valuable and their work that they do is valuable. So intentionally doing that is very important. The third or the fourth point, I've always wanted good mentors. So I try to be that for everybody else. I try to seek them. I try to actually, reach out to them, connect with them to make sure that this is a safe space. Reach out to me if you have any questions, only when you're comfortable, as usual, and actively mentoring anybody that I see. So that's what I'm doing as a leader.
This is so awesome. That this last part, I think we should just play that on loop everywhere. Thank you. This is so powerful. And I was going to quote a dead white man and say the lesson is do thine own self be true, but I will not do that because I have consciously decolonized myself. So I will actually quote an African proverb that sums up what you said. If you cut your chains, you free yourself. If you cut your roots, you die. So let us focus on cutting our chains and not cutting our roots to succeed in this world. And with that, thank you so much for this incredible, I was getting goosebumps when Philip was talking about not coming out, because I came out twice in my life, once as a gay man and once as a non-binary person. And trust me, the second one's tougher than the first one. If you just think, it's just crazy. We all live in closets of other people's creations, and it's, time to open up all the closets of whatever they might be. So on that note, thank you so much. Really appreciate this. Look forward to the webinar and the webinar series. This is the second of the 4 webinars. Please go ahead and download this wonderful white paper called Impact Beyond the Diversity Headlines from TechPACT. You can also buy it on Amazon. All proceeds do go to TechPACT. And on the point of mentorship, I just wanted to give people an early preview that TechPACT is launching its first cohort of a mentorship program that you'll hear of more as we move forward, both creating opportunities for leaders such as Philip and Rachel to be mentors for other people in the community, but also for people who may seek mentorship outside their formal organizations to get trusted members of TechPACT to be mentors. So please look out for that as well. Again, thank you very much, and see you again for the other webinars. Bye.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.